Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com today. Or again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Brandon Berg. He is an R&D Senior VP. And in this episode, we'll explore how technical leaders can communicate complex ideas clearly to non-technical audiences. We'll chat about strategies for aligning innovation with organizational goals, coaching teams to present effectively, and influencing stakeholders to support R&D priorities. And we'll also gain insights on building trust, driving adoption, and making technical work accessible and impactful. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Brandon.
Thanks, Neil. Excited for the discussion.
Wonderful. So, first question, when did you first realize that effective communication with non-technical stakeholders was critical to your job?
I think it was probably the first year as an engineer and realizing that to get investment and support from leadership, it was critical that they understood what I was trying to do or what I was trying to propose or what I wanted to spend my time on. And I think it was pretty clear I needed to connect what I was doing to business results or business opportunity to really get investment and get support.
I commend you for realizing that early on, Brandon. That certainly wasn't the case for me. In fact, it was during my second job. I had to give presentations in front of management on a monthly basis, and those presentations, those first few, were well, they were terrible, Brandon. I'm not sure they could have gone any worse. And I knew I wasn't doing a very good job because after the presentations, I get a whole bunch of questions I thought I'd answered during the presentation. It just made, and you thought I would have gotten the hint after that first presentation, but I didn't.
Yeah.
That
Well,
first or second.
I'm certainly not saying I did a good job at that point, but I do, when I think back, I recognized it pretty early that because I was in a role that I really needed investment to keep doing what I wanted to do. And it hits you pretty quick. You need to be able to explain to people why it matters to the business and why it matters to the growth of the company.
Yeah. So how did your approach to explaining technical work evolve as you took on more strategic responsibilities?
Yeah, I think even just this morning, I was trying to communicate it's something you have to get better at every single day. But I do think the connection to the business, like why does what we're doing matter, and making sure that you don't just spend all your time on the technical side of things, but you also connect it to why it matters to the business, why it matters to the operating division or whatever that you are talking to. That is really what over time I always start with why does what I'm doing matter, and even with the teams that I work with, that's really where the first question is I love this idea that you have, but why does it matter? Why would customers pay for this? Why would the business benefit from this? And you really got to start with that, and then you get into the technical work.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us technical people we forget that, or not even forget. We never really thought about it in the first place. We just assume that our technical work and our expertise speaks for itself, and we never really think about how this benefits other people outside of our expertise. It's just how do you not know? I know, so you should know, but they
Yeah,
don't
right.
know.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
they don't know.
Exactly.
All right. So, what are the most common ways technical professionals struggle to convey innovation and technical detail to non-technical audiences?
Yeah, again, I'll just say it again. I think the first struggle is not connecting it with why it matters to the audience or why it matters to the business, or making the assumption that they understand the why. I've fallen into that mistake many times where I just assume that if I'm selling a new idea or my team's selling a new idea, that people understand why we're doing that, and we kind of blow past that, or we don't confirm or validate that the audience understands. And then we spend all this time on the cool idea, all the technical side of it, and everyone in the audience, in hindsight, everyone in the audience is still trying to figure out why we're even talking about this or why does this matter. I think that's a mistake I've made many, many times, and I see our teams making that mistake.
Yeah, I think three questions that a technical person should ask others after a presentation, if at all possible, was the presentation understandable, relevant, and actionable? And I think we skip over a lot of those. The understandable part, we just think, well, I understand it, so you should understand it too.
Right.
But but a lot of instances, we didn't always understand what we now understand. Like we weren't always technical people, and we forget that because especially the longer you are in a role. But when you're talking to non-technical people, you have to recognize that they didn't go through the same, they don't have the same background as you. So why would they understand what you understand? Because, and as I
Right.
said, you didn't always understand what you understand. But
Right.
and then with the relevant part, I certainly think that you don't want to be, you don't want to have after a presentation, you don't want people asking themselves, did I have to be here? You really want them to know that whatever this person was talking about was relevant to me, and so it was important for me to be in this room to engage with this presenter. And then the
Yeah.
actual part is that people really want to know, okay, now what? Okay, you
Yeah.
presented all this stuff to me, and now what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. I think the other word I think about is simplicity too. I think sometimes I've over my over the years I've gotten caught where I've haven't really understood the most simplest way to explain something, and challenging yourself to think about what is the simplest, most concise way to explain a technical thing you're working on, really allows you then communicate very clearly to a non-technical audiences. And I that's another thing that I think a lot about when I'm getting ready to present for investment of some kind, or I'm reviewing a presentation by the team members or something. I think about, are we saying it in the most simplest, concise form or not? Um, and again, just that challenge alone allows you to refine your presentation or refine your message that you're trying to convey.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we focus on or we think about all this technical jargon that we obviously understand and all these acronyms that we understand, and then we want to say these in front of non-technical people and assume that they understand them, and you don't never want to be in a position where they don't ask what those words mean,
Right.
even if they don't understand them, because now you basically wasted your time. If you were trying to get buy-in, you likely are not going to get it because they didn't understand what you were talking about.
Yeah, very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I've certainly been in that situation more than once. Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious. You had mentioned earlier that in making these improvements to the presentations that you do is something that was important to you to figure out. What did you actually do to improve at that?
Yeah, I think some of it's just practice and just with experience and the number of times you do it. Um, over the years, I've taken classes or taken, got different training on of various kinds around presentation skills or developing presentations. But honestly, one of the biggest things that I enjoy watching how other people do it, and how they in any presentation that you see that you sit through or that you're part of, taking away. I always try to take away something that seemed to work or something that didn't work, and making sure you incorporate that into what you do next. I think just being very aware and being very uh, reflective on what you're seeing and what you're watching other people do. I think that's a great way to kind of incorporate that into the next time that that you present or that you are trying to make a pitch for something that's in a non-technical audience.
Yeah. When you're watching a presentation, Brandon, what is an example of something that works and something that doesn't work?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in visuals, and the less words on a slide or the less verbose you are, the better. And technical things, it tends to be visuals of some kind or diagrams or drawings, and that tends to be it's almost like a common language, if you will, across all the different audiences is to use visuals. And so I have over time, I challenge myself to use a lot more visuals and less words, to explain something. And um, usually it's a great way to describe kind of what the current state might be or what the current thing is that's going on and then where you want to go. Because in the technical side of things, you're generally pitching something that's a change to what we do today, whether it's something better or different or new or more optimized or more cost effective, whatever it might be. And most people don't want to change. Most people want to continue to do what they're doing today. And so you're always selling change. And so I think a visual that kind of is able to convey what the current state is today and where you want to go in a very simple, concise way tends to work really well. Um, and again, what doesn't seem to work very well is when you get too verbose or too many words or too much uh, or too many extraneous facts and terms. That's another one that as I'm thinking here, I have caught myself a few times where wanting to make sure that I get all the information out there. And the reality is there's only a couple core things that really matter. And you tend to kind of, um, you put a lot of fog around the main message with all this extra information.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Brandon, especially, well, with both of your points, what works and what doesn't work. When it comes to what works, I'm a big fan of visuals as well, because a lot of times if you have a lot of text on the slide, people will read and they won't listen. And they
Right. Yeah,
probably,
exactly.
and they may
Yeah.
very well also think, well, I could have read this at my own convenience. I didn't need to sit here listening to you read because I can
Yeah.
read too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have this job if I couldn't read. That's
That's right.
probably
Yeah.
so. Yeah, so I fully agree with the usefulness of visuals instead, since well you can't read, so now you're either going to listen or ignore me. Pick one.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then I also like your point about uh, eliminating extraneous information. In fact, when I put presentations together, I start with what I want people to take away and what do I want people to think or do after the presentation? Essentially, what is the call to action? And then I'll work backwards from that, figuring out what points do I need to make that will lead to that call to action. And what that does is it eliminates any extraneous information that you would have had in the presentation. Because you're right, especially if you're talking to a non-technical audience, there's only so much they can take in anyway. So if you're trying to shoehorn everything you know into a
Yeah.
presentation, well, they're probably going to tap out at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually seen people, literally they'll say, here's some information. And my goal right now is to teach you what what I've learned about this particular item or particular topic. And then the next, I'm teaching here, I'm informing you here. Here's a decision we need to make. Here's action we need to take so that people understand kind of the context. And because I have learned that many people are very interested in wanting to learn what some of the technical details are that we're talking through. Um, but you also have to give them context about why are we talking about this? This is all about trying to teach on a particular topic and not necessarily a decision that you need to make or necessarily an action you need to take out of this.
When it comes to simplifying a technical presentation, Brandon, do you have a particular approach that you use to do that?
Um, I'm fairly hierarchical, I guess, when I think about, so I always start with the why, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then go back to the why again kind of thing. I think that's maybe a structure that I try to use. That uh, and if you can do that all in like one slide or in one executive summary, whatever that is, and try to force yourself to much less information that way, it forces you to boil up the message to the right level of detail. So I think in general, just constraining yourself to how much sometimes it's artificial, like it's only one slide or it's only a 4 box or it's only some that by constraining yourself that way, you force yourself to only convey the most important information. There's been times where I've challenged myself to not use any words, only use pictures, and trying to, and it doesn't always work, but trying to only use pictures and then do the voiceover after that. And again, it really forces your mind to only say the most important thing and not get caught in all this extraneous information.
Absolutely. What about instances in which you have an audience that's more mixed? So you have technical people in the audience, you have non-technical people in the audience. How do you address audiences when you have that mix?
That's a really good question. Um, yeah, that's a tough one sometimes because the uh, if there's other engineers, other scientists in the audience, they are likely they might know the topic even better than you do in some cases. So I think just acknowledging the fact that again, I'm going to give everyone a background here on the science of this chemistry or something like that, and some of you may know this really well, but others may not. And I want to get everyone up to a certain level of common understanding. I think I would just preface it that way and make sure that they understand that's what I'm doing. Um, but yeah, that's actually a really good. That happens actually a fair amount in a lot of the companies that your audience is probably a part of. Is that there are definitely other scientists and engineers in the audience. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, I like your idea, and I am an advocate for that idea as well in terms of prefacing what you're about to say. So if you're going to say something that is more technical, you say, well, to get more technical, and then you say whatever it is, so that at least the non-technical people will know, well, okay, they're going to some stuff that perhaps I don't know,
Yeah,
but then you preface something like to simplify. Well, now the non-technical people, okay, I can take on the simplified stuff,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I can understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, another pitfall I see sometimes is that the audiences will, or I like to think sometimes and make sure that the audiences truly understand what I'm saying and they truly hear me. Because a lot of times and depending on the dynamics in the room or depending on how many people are in the room, it's not necessarily popular for people to raise their hand and say, "I don't really understand what you're saying." They just kind of they almost they nod their heads and like you and I are, like they just kind of, yes, I agree or I understand. And that is actually the most dangerous situation because what happens then is in 3 months from now, when you need their support or when you run into a problem and you need to persevere through the challenge, they don't really understand it. And then they're not there to support it. And that's actually something in the last few years I end up coaching a lot on that with my team is that I don't know that people are really understanding you. And so we got to really make sure that we're clarifying this message or we're brushing up on this message to make sure it's very clear what we're trying to do. Because again, it's not human nature to kind of raise your hand and say, I don't really understand what you're saying. People just kind of nod their head and yeah, I get it. And then that they don't really understand. And that happens in the technical to non-technical audience a lot more than I guess I even understood earlier in my career. But that's something I definitely spend more time on in the last few years.
I commend you for spending time on that, Brandon. I think you're absolutely right on that instance because you're right. When people are a technical person speaking to a non-technical person, the non-technical person already knows that they're at a deficit with that technical information, and they may have ego. I don't want to appear foolish in front of these people,
Yeah.
so you have some cojones or have some confidence to say I don't understand because oftentimes that is the people who will say it. You're right. Most people will stay silent because they're looking around and thinking, well, no one else is asking questions,
Right.
so I'm
Right.
not going to be the one to stick my head out to ask a question. Now everyone thinks I'm incompetent and shouldn't have the job.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and yeah, you definitely don't want to be in that position. And then I was having a conversation recently with another technical leader, and he said that even in instances where we're talking to another technical person, but they're a technical person who doesn't know as much about your technical area as you do, they also will not want to say anything because they figure, well, other people won't think that I'm competent too because, well, you're a technical person too, so you of course you should
Right.
understand, right? Oh, no,
Right.
not this part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually something. It's also something. It's a little bit. It's also something that I think about. How do I create an environment where people do ask, are willing to admit they don't understand it, are willing to ask questions. And I have some peers I work with today that are really good at that. They create an environment that it's okay to say I don't really understand that. All right, I'd love to learn more about that. And that's again, that's just something I've realized over the last many years that is just a critical thing that when we're communicating technical to non-technical that people really understand to the level they need to be consistently supporting, consistently investing, consistently a champion for what you're trying to accomplish. And way too many times, I think people don't really understand.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Way too many times they don't understand it and they won't say anything. And you're right. It'd be great if you could foster an environment where people are comfortable asking questions. And a lot of times that may not be the case. You may tell them, no question's a dumb question or a foolish question, so please ask them. But if they're not seeing anyone else asking questions, they may not believe
Right,
you. So
right, yeah,
it takes
exactly.
that confident person that will ask the question, whether you say anything, whether you say it's safe to ask questions here. They're going to ask their questions anyway because they're curious people and they want to know regardless of what you say. And when other people see that, well, okay, now I feel like comfortable asking the question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's just how it goes sometimes. That's for sure. When it comes to an organization and it recognizing the usefulness of technical people improving in their communication skills, what can an organization do to help their technical people do that?
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it is just practice and experience and the number of times that the technical person is presenting. I think the making sure that there's um, a lot of areas that I've been involved with my career. There's a strong business, but also technical part of the discussion or part of the pitch to a customer or a discussion with a supplier, whatever it might be. So making sure that the technical person is next to the business person when they're talking about things, and acknowledging and recognizing that there's certainly a business element and everything goes back to the business, but many topics in the worlds that I've been involved with have a very strong technical component to them, and making sure that that is also highlighted and you're creating space and time and putting energy into that message as well. A lot of the in relationships that I have with outside of the companies that I've worked with partners and things, are very founded on a strong business, but also technical relationship, and just again making sure that technical relationship is highlighted and seen as almost as important as the business relationship. I think is a really key thing for organizations.
I like your point about the usefulness or the importance of the technical person being beside the business person. And it reminded me of a conference that I attended a couple of summers ago. It was a business development person that was giving a presentation at a technical conference. And after the presentation, they received a whole bunch of technical questions they couldn't answer. And I felt really bad for them at the time. But luckily, there were two engineers from their company who were in the audience and they answered all the questions. And I said all
Yeah,
the questions were technical. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, why wasn't one of them right beside that business person giving the presentation in the first
yeah,
place? Especially since it was a technical conference, it's mostly engineers in the audience, and engineers tend to have more technical questions as opposed to business questions. So they shouldn't have been surprised that they got a whole lot of technical questions. But yet here are these two engineers seated beside me answering the questions.
yeah. Yeah, and I think when it comes to a product or a service or something that you're talking to a customer with, a lot of times the technical person or the technical component of that really builds confidence in why you should buy the product from us, because we have a sound technical or engineering approach to something. And again, I have luckily been able and been part of a lot of presentations that are business and technical. But as you just described, what you just said, as I think about that, if that technical component wasn't there, I kind of wonder how often we would have gotten the business or have gotten that idea through with a customer, because we weren't able to build the confidence on the technical side. And again, most of the areas I've been involved in my career have a strong technical or product component to it, or technology component to it, and it's just a critical piece of the business opportunity in front of you.
100%, especially if the buyer has a technical background.
Yeah,
They're going to have technical questions too. And if you want to just hit them with a whole bunch of sales jargon, then these people don't know what they're talking about.
yeah,
We're going to
yeah,
a competitor.
yeah,
So yeah, you definitely don't want to be in that position. So for the people who were at that conference I'm talking about a couple of summers ago, get your engineers in concert with the business development people for giving their presentations. It'll go a long way. This has been a great conversation, Brandon. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
you can certainly search me on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to message me. And love to continue this conversation. And the thing I would just say is, every day we all have to keep getting better at this and keep practicing. And it's certainly not something that I've you never really master it. You got to keep trying and keep experimenting with different ideas, and I'm experimenting with different ways to communicate. But I really appreciate the opportunity today, Neil, to talk through this, and really enjoyed the conversation.
Wonderful. And you're absolutely right. Practice makes progress. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Neil.